Hi, so I am here today to talk about a way in which we can prevent terrorist attacks from occurring. And we already do have many ways. For example, strict security through airports or 360 rotation cameras, as well as high technology scanners. But what we really haven't thought about is a way to really understand terrorists. What if we can peer into the minds of what makes a terrorist? Then will we be able to prevent future attacks as well as keep our families and friends safe? So, during the terrorist attack at 9/11, there were 3,000 people who were killed and 6,000 other people who were majorly injured. This alone in America turned into hatred and began a rise into those who thought Muslims were all terrorists. We solely believed that Islam was a threat to the entire world. And in some of all this truth, terrorists are not just subjected to a specific group of people or a specific demographic. Terrorists are able to live amongst us and live in America anywhere and any time. My example and evidence includes in August recently, a 20-year-old man, a white Nazi sympathizer from Ohio, sped his car into a crowd of anti-racist protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia. He killed a woman and injured 19 other people. In another example, on June 12, 2016, Omar Metin, a American-born citizen, pledged allegiance to ISIS. He killed 49 people and wounded others in a shooting spree at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. This was termed the second deadliest mass shootings in recent history and the nation's worst terrorist attack since 9/11. And then my last example includes recently on a Sunday night, a 64-year-old white man from Nevada opened fire on a crowd of more than 22,000 people at a country music festival in Las Vegas. Um, he killed more than 50 and then wounded more than 200 people as well. So we can already see that terrorist attacks can occur anywhere and any time. We already have the advanced technologies and securities in airports, but what about away from there? What can we truly do as citizens to protect others? And based on psychological supported evidence, I present to you a theoretical design approach as one of the many solutions to war on terror. A Victorian psychologist and philosopher once stated that a mankind's common instinct for reality has always held to the world to be essentially a theater for heroism. No matter what a man's fragilities may be, if he is willing to risk death, and still more if he suffer it heroically, then he has chosen it in, this fact consecrates him forever. This relates to Ari Krulinski's research on what it means to be a terrorist and the motivations of them. So he found that terrorists feel that through suicide their lives will achieve tremendous significance. They will become heroes or martyrs. Their lives will become significant then. In many cases, their decisions is based on a response to a great loss of significance, which can occur through humiliation, discrimination, or personal problems that have nothing to do with the conflict in which their group is engaged in. He found that sometimes the loss of significance is felt by individuals who are deviating from the norms of the group, such as women who are infertile or who are divorced, as well as those who are accused of extramarital affairs. In traditional societies, they suffer a tremendous amount of humiliation. Then, to compensate for this, some of them do something that is held extremely high regard in their community. For example, self-sacrifice for the sake of their cause. So, in another research, Krulinski found that There are three things that define a terrorist. Number one is group pressure. Number two is influence. And number three is the desire to belong. So in the research, he had participants in one group read a letter using we, our, us, and ours. In another group, he had the participants read a letter using I, me, and myself. What he found was that after reading these letters in a experimental design to set up where a group is attacked by something that was dangerous, for example, a oncoming train, the participant would have the chance to save their group or to save themselves. What he found was that 90% of the participants that were primed with the we, are, us, and ours, most of the time they saved their group instead of themselves. So we can say that counter messages equals counterproductive most of the time. And we can't always fight fear with fear. So how do we take this and prevent terrorist attacks? We can start by winning the hearts and minds of terrorists. If you can't beat them, then join them. So let's dive into the solution called paradoxical thinking by Eran Haplin. Eran Haplin defines paradoxical thinking as the attempt to change attitudes using new information that is consistent with the held societal beliefs, but of extreme content that is intended to lead the individual to paradoxically think that his or her own beliefs or attitudes are irrational or senseless. In other words, this means that we are trying to reframe the person's held attitudes and beliefs to create kind of a momentum for change. In other words, this also means to use people's opinions against theirs. So, how do we participate in paradoxical thinking? It's simple. By simply doing the very opposite of what would be considered the natural reaction to situations or events or attitudes. So, say you have a friend who is in love with dinosaurs and you are in love with snakes. Well, you can go on about how snakes are so much better and you can proclaim your love for snakes, but this would just freeze your friend's love for dinosaurs even more, correct? Therefore, you tell him that dinosaurs are also awesome, and that you tell him that it's so much better than every other animal in the entire world, and it's so much better than family, friends, dreams, and love, and so on. And in all of this, this may make your friend reconsider of what is really important and how dinosaurs may not really be all that perfect. Back to Hapron's experiment. Based on the paradoxical thinking approach, what he did was he used the transmission of messages using ads that were extreme but congruent to the Israeli ethics of conflict. To examine the intervention's effectiveness, he sampled 215 Jewish Israelis and compared them to 320 control condition participants with similar demographic and political characteristics. He basically took the core ideas of Israeli and took it to the extreme to use it against the participants. Results showed that the intervention led participants to actually decrease their adherence to conflict supporting attitudes across time because they were bombarded with views even more extreme than their own, hence using their opinions against them. This also led to less support for aggressive policies that the government should consider, as well as more support for peacemaking policies to end the violence and promote a long-lasting agreement in Israel. I present to you the design solution of paradoxical thinking. Violence. We cannot continue to use violence on war on terror all the time, and it is surely not the answer. We cannot continue to fight fear with fear. We need a design approach where it can be used all the time. This is something that technology cannot be done because it cannot be used anywhere or anytime all the time. But what if we can take this theoretical design approach of paradoxical thinking and put it into action? Then will we be able to prevent war on terror and keep our family and friends safe? Martin Luther King once stated that the ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, beginning the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies. Though violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder the hate. Thank you.